Welcome to another episode of the AI-driven Swebbcast. The source content is all Swebb, but the interpretation and presentation is all AI.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the materials you're curious about, dive in, and pull out the key stuff so you can get informed, well, fast.
Yep. And today we're looking into a really interesting conversation. It's all about how a church runs the operations, the leadership, and crucially, how you build systems that actually work.
Right. We've got this transcript from a coaching call. It features Swebb. He's a leadership coach, focuses on church ops. People call him a thinking coach, apparently.
Yeah, he sounds like it. He's talking with a leader from a specific church, but we're going to focus on Swebb's ideas, his recommendations, without getting bogged down in specific names beyond Swebb himself.
Okay, so the big question driving our deep dive today is really, what are those fundamental pieces you need for any organization, really, to thrive? Like, what building blocks lead to real, sustainable growth and impact? Let's get into it.
So Swebb kicks things off pretty directly. He observes that a lot of churches, including the one in this call, just lack clear standards.
Okay, lack of standards. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, it means things kind of drift towards mediocrity. But the key thing he points out is the difference between having standards and just relying on, say, the senior pastor's personality.
Ah, right. Like if the main leader is really charismatic, it can maybe cover up for weaker systems.
Exactly. Things might look good on the surface because of that one person.
Yeah.
But Swebb asks, what if they weren't there? He even threw out a number, maybe the church would only be 15 people without that central figure, hypothetically speaking.
Wow, okay. So it's about building something that lasts beyond one individual.
Precisely. True standards, Swebb argues, have to be transferable. They become the actual culture, the way things are done, no matter who is leading at that moment.
And how do you make that concrete? Seems a bit abstract.
He uses this concept of non-negotiable, his rule of thumb. 5 non-negotiables for absolutely everything the church does.
5. That's specific. For everything.
Yep. He thinks it forces clarity. For example, take their main services, what he calls mass gatherings. He points out they don't really have a clear definition, a hallmark of what that service is.
So people might say it's about faith or excitement, but
those are fuzzy, right? How do you measure excitement? How do you train someone to deliver faith? If you can't define it clearly, you can't improve it consistently. You need something objective.
That makes a lot of sense. It connects directly to improving things like stage communication, which can feel really subjective, that whole vibe thing.
Totally. Feedback like you need more energy isn't super helpful. Swebb says, shift to what you can actually see.
Like what?
Like, are people checking their phones during the message? Are they leaning forward? Are they responding when asked? Observable behaviors.
Okay, look at the audience reaction, not just the feeling you get from the speaker.
Yeah, and also reverse engineer success. When something does work, well, maybe lots of hands go up. Figure out why. What did the speaker do? What was happening?
Got it. And he also mentioned practical stuff like block management.
Right, just how time is used in the service. He pointed out a common issue. Hosts rambling during the welcome or the offering or announcements.
We've all seen that.
And that rambling can easily come across as a bad vibe or low energy, when really it might just be poor planning or nervousness.
Yeah.
It's a fixable structure problem, not necessarily a personality flaw.
Okay, structure impacting perception. That leads us nicely into the whole topic of announcements. Sounds like Swebb had some strong opinions there.
Oh, yeah. Particularly about the senior pastor, often repeating announcements that were already shown in a video.
Redundant announcements. Why was he so against that?
He basically said the church shouldn't act like an event organization. He even framed it as a kind of theological issue.
Theological? How so?
Well, his point was you work hard to create this atmosphere. Maybe it's worship, maybe it's a message, aiming for spiritual connection. And then you immediately pivot to pitching, like the upcoming cheese event.
The cheese event. Okay, vivid analogy. So it's jarring.
Exactly. It breaks the flow, potentially undermines the spiritual atmosphere you just tried to build. And beyond that, it's bad communication strategy.
How so?
Because you're training people that the only place to get important information is from the stage announcements. So they stop paying attention to emails, social media, the bulletin, whatever other channels you're using.
Ah, so it makes all other communication less effective?
Yep. And it disrupts the whole journey, as Swebb puts it, for the people attending, especially if someone's new or maybe going through a tough time. A barrage of event plugs isn't really meeting them where they are.
Makes sense. So thinking about flow and managing the service, this leads to another scenario they discussed, planning for disruptions, specifically the senior pastor sometimes being late. The Russell is late scenario, as Swebb called it.
Right, a specific recurring challenge. And the leader, Thielman, was already thinking proactively, maybe have testimony videos queued up or get the campus pastor ready to step in.
Good ideas. What was Swebb's take?
He was really encouraging about that initiative. He basically told the leader to step into authority. Don't always wait for explicit permission for every contingency. Take action.
That's empowering. Practical solutions.
We'll definitely have those backup videos preloaded in the system. Easy win. But also plan for it structurally. Build in, say, a consistent 10-minute buffer in the service flow.
A buffer, okay.
And develop internal readiness. Have a go-to 3-minute testimony someone can share or a standard welcome segment ready to deploy if needed.
So have tools in the toolbox.
Exactly. He even floated the idea of slightly delaying the service start time as a gentle nudge, but acknowledged that might get pushback. The main thing is having a plan, communicating that plan to the team, and building credibility by handling these hiccups smoothly.
It really comes back to that idea of being in control, or at least appearing to be in control, even when things go sideways.
Totally. Swebb used the analogy of a circus, that feeling you get when things seem chaotic and unplanned. It undermines confidence.
Yeah, nobody wants to feel like they're at a circus unless they bought a ticket for one.
Right. So his advice is, even if you are running late or something technical goes wrong, communicate clearly, tell the congregation what's happening, give updates. He even suggested using a countdown timer on screen if needed.
Oh, interesting. Like, we're sorting something out back in 5 minutes.
Yeah, it gives people a sense of control and information rather than just leaving them hanging. Builds confidence. It's similar to how you'd handle tech issues at a multi-site campus. The local leader needs to step up and reassure people.
Okay, so control communication. This ties into developing people who can handle being on stage. The leader wanted more people capable of doing that.
Yeah, a common need.
Yeah.
And Swebb's solution was very practical.
Yeah.
Regular stage drills.
Stage drills, like practice.
Exactly. Mandatory, maybe weekly at first, like 1.5 hours. Get everyone who might potentially be on stage, youth leaders, video hosts, whoever, in a room together.
But not just practicing lines, right?
No, crucially, he said, you need the philosophical understanding first. Why are we communicating this way? What's the goal? Then you drill specific scenarios.
Like what kind of scenarios?
Like delivering a tight 2-minute host segment welcome, one announcement, the offering, or planning on the fly what to do if there's suddenly a 10-minute gap you need to fill.
Okay, real world situations.
And simulate the conditions. Use a microphone. Have a timer running. It's about building muscle memory, getting comfortable under pressure. Mastery comes from that repetition, that drilling.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
It treats stage communication like a skill to be developed, not just something you're born with, which leads to the question of who should be on stage.
Right. Swebb talked about having consistent, recognizable hosts for certain parts of the service, that host segment mentality. And he introduced this key idea, the qualified stage host.
Qualified.
Meaning someone who's actually been trained in all the aspects of stage communication they discussed, who understands the philosophy, who meets a certain standard. It's not about their job title.
So a campus pastor might typically be a host, but someone else could be qualified too.
Absolutely. The point is, you set standards for becoming qualified, and then you prioritize putting those qualified people on stage.
Not just whoever holds a certain position, or maybe who gives a lot of money.
Definitely not based on donations. He was clear on that. The focus has to be on their ability to genuinely connect with the audience. He used that prodigal son perspective. People need to feel seen and connected by the person up front.
And local leaders need to be visible, right?
Yeah, people need to know, who's my local point person? Who do I talk to, good or bad? So avoid just rotating random people for the sake of it, unless it serves a specific purpose in the service flow.
How many qualified hosts would a church need, roughly?
For the size they were discussing, Swebb estimated around 15 people who are regularly critiqued and coached. The goal isn't just finding people who look good or have nice personalities. It's training people who can actually move the audience.
Okay, training over just raw talent. It sounds like this church was realizing they needed more internal development overall, not just for the stage.
Yeah, the leader acknowledged they tended to pay for external production help rather than building up their own people. They were working on pathway mapping, though, figuring out the journey for members, first-time guests.
Like the Pursue DNA or membership class type of thing.
Right, and there was this desire to shift more towards discipleship, beyond just asking people to serve and give. But they also admitted that 10 years in, they still hadn't quite figured out small groups effectively.
So these different threads, standards, stage presence, development, they all seem to connect back to some core issues.
Exactly. Swebb kept bringing it back.
Yeah.
The lack of standards is the root. Without clear standards, you can't have real accountability.
And you might be winning, as he put it, but you don't know why.
Right, which makes it really hard to repeat success or fix problems systematically. And it reinforces that risk of being just a personality-driven church.
Vulnerable if that key person isn't around?
Totally. Swebb did acknowledge this church had uncommon effort, people worked hard. But he warned that effort alone isn't sustainable without structure. You need the standards and accountability first before you can effectively focus on development pathways.
So structure first. Now, they also talked about reframing membership, moving away from that perception of it just being about serving and giving.
Yeah, the leader was concerned about that perception, and Swebb agreed it's a problem. His advice was a fundamental shift. Focus on what the church wants for people, not just what it wants from them.
What does that look like in practice?
Start those assimilation or membership conversations by talking about the value of the person right where they are. In their context, like living in Seattle, in their example. Talk about the human desire for alignment, for life to make sense, and offer Jesus as the way to achieve that.
Okay, so start with their needs and perspective.
Right. Create an environment that's welcoming, even for people who aren't fully on board yet. Avoid that take feeling that makes people eventually leave because they feel used.
And how does serving fit into that?
Frame serving as something significant for the person doing it. Their growth, their contribution, and also vital for the church's mission and growth. It's a partnership, not just fulfilling a church need.
That's a much healthier framing. So, okay, lots of diagnoses, lots of ideas. What were the actionable next steps Swebb gave?
His main advice was super simple. Just start. Don't get paralyzed by the scale of it.
Okay, but start what?
He suggested creating 3 basic Google Docs or whatever tool works. One for service standards, one for stage hosting, and one for assimilation membership.
Just blank documents to begin with?
Pretty much. And share them with the relevant team members immediately. For the stage hosting one, he said, write a thesis statement. Here's where we are now with hosting. Here's where we want to go, focusing on better transitions, etc.
So define the problem and the goal.
Yeah, and then just start jotting down initial thoughts in all 3 documents, get some momentum going. The idea isn't to perfect them overnight.
Right. What's the end goal for those documents?
Eventually, to distill them down. Especially the standards. Get them to concise, maybe 1-page summaries focused on those key non-negotiables, the transferable baseline practices.
Get them usable and clear.
Exactly. And underpinning all of this, Swebb emphasized constantly asking the foundational question for every single thing the church does. Where are we taking people? What's the intended journey?
Okay, so wrapping this all up, the really big takeaways seem to be the absolute necessity of clear, measurable standards for everything. The importance of planning proactively, especially for disruptions.
Yep, and intentionally developing people, particularly for communication roles, based on skill and training, not just position, and approaching the congregation with a focus on what you want for them, not just from them.
And the thread tying it all together, that through line, is really about building sustainable, impactful organizations through solid systems, rather than just banking on heroic individual efforts or personalities.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
It's about the foundations.
So that leaves us with a thought for you listening in. How could identifying and actually implementing some clear non-negotiables change things in your world? Could be work, could be a personal project. What intentional journey are you trying to guide others on, even informally?
Yeah, it's powerful stuff to think about. How can these principles apply to your own situation?
Definitely something to mull over. We hope this deep dive gave you some valuable insights. If you want to explore related topics or have your own experiences or questions you'd like us to tackle in a future deep dive, please reach out.
Are you going to do something with what you just heard? Or are you just trying to be entertained? Share this episode, then connect with Swebb. Bring him to your headquarters or visit him in Austin, Texas. Swebb is a productive disruptor for leaders and teams in churches and marketplace organizations. His goal is to make you better first, make you a friend later. Swebb serves leaders and executive teams around the world, primarily focused on helping organizations maximize what they say they want to do. He drives you to execute on your expectations, even if it hurts your ego. He's not here to please everyone, nor does he seek validation. But if you're serious about elevating your leadership and team performance, you'll know where to find him. Connect with Swebb at swebb.fyi or on Instagram at swebbfyi. You doing all you said you'd do, that's what the church and the world needs.